In this video, I'm going to demonstrate the process to add an additional lane to our superelevation. So I have a superelevation definition here, and there's a couple different ways I can add lanes. I can add a lane for the entire length of the alignment, or I can add lanes for only a portion of it. So in the Create tools under Create Superelevation Lanes, I can come in and add a lane to a specific section. So I'm adding this lane, maybe right lane 2, so a second lane on the right. And my type is a primary or auxiliary. So primary is going to be for the full length of the alignment. And I'm going to give an offset, in this case 12 feet and 12 feet wide, so that would add that lane over here. And then my normal cross slope. So that's one way to add a lane, and then I would have to define superelevation for that lane as well. When I'm doing this, if I only wanted to enter a lane for a short segment, which is most likely what you're going to want to do at this stage, if you have primary lanes, you've probably already entered those when you initially created the superelevation. If I want only a lane for a specific portion, instead of a primary lane, I can add an auxiliary lane. And then there's a couple new options or parameters here. So there's the application type. This is going to define how our cross slopes are assigned to that. So I can tell it, don't assign cross slopes. Use a constant slope or follow an adjacent lane. I'm going to demonstrate the constant slope option. So what I'm going to do is just add a lane here for a portion, and I should have attached another center line, so let's do that real quick and I'll come back to the tool. Let me bring in the center line for the side road here. So under my Engineering Roadway Base Maps folder, I'm going to bring in the BK5, which has my center line for my Jameson Road alignment. Go ahead and bring that in. So I'm going to put a lane that starts somewhere in here around station 413 or so and comes up to my side road that would be maybe a turn lane. So let's go back under the Create tool. I'm going to create a superelevation lane, and I'm going to name this the right turn lane. Side is going to be the right on this section, and instead of primary, I'm going to use auxiliary. And again, I'll choose it as a constant slope. So I think about this and how I want to transition this. I'm in full super here, full 8% super. So this turn lane is going to come out, and I'm going to follow the same slope for a way. And then as I approach the superelevation, I'm going to crank this lane down and flatten it out to 3%. So the first piece is going to match the slope of my lane that's already there. Now, from a template standpoint, I don't necessarily have to have a shape here to define that slope, since it's going to match the slope. And I'll open my templates here in a few minutes, and we'll talk about that a little bit. So I really don't necessarily have to have the first piece that matches the slope of the pavement that's already there, or the lane that's already there. So I'm going to start putting in a second piece where I'm going to go from 8% down to 3%. And I'm just going to pick some stations to put this in. Design-wise, these may not be appropriate values, but they'll illustrate the purpose. So I'm going to just start from station 413 and just go up to station 415. So I'll do a 200-foot transition here of my slopes. So we're going to do a constant slope, and I'm using constant because the software only allows me, whether I pick none or constant, it only allows me to pick one slope. I can't define one for the start and the end. So I'm going to put it in as a constant and then edit that. So I'm going to go on the right side, 12 feet out, a width of 12 feet. So I'd already picked my superelevation section, and it's floating on the cursor, reset to complete picking the sections. So I'll go ahead and do that. I should have done that before I started talking about the parameters. So I'm going to define my right turn lane as an auxiliary lane with a constant slope on the right, 12 feet out, 12 feet wide. And we're going to start this from station 413 plus 00. Accept that. And then we're going to take this up to station 415. Accept that. And I'm going to do a cross slope of 8%. So that defines that lane. And if I select that, I can review its parameters, and I can change this slope at this end to 3%. So I can see now some shading as it changes its slope, and I can see the 8% here and 3% there. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to go ahead and put in another shape. So create my lanes, pick my section. This is an auxiliary lane, and name this as right turn lane 2 is my second piece of this definition. Auxiliary lane, I'm going to tell it a constant slope. On the right side, 12 feet out, 12 feet wide, and we're going to start at 415. And I'm going to take this up to all the way up to the center line of the side road. So I'll just snap to that and accept that value. And we're going to put this to 3% cross slope. So it's a constant slope. So there's my second piece of my turn lane transition at a constant 3%. So again, I don't necessarily have to have the first piece. It doesn't hurt to define a piece there, but it's not going to taper its width. It would be the full width of 12 feet. And again, that goes back to how the templates define. So if I look at my templates, in the ODOT templates, I'm going to go under the backbones for undivided roadways, and we have a 3-lane with the PGL on the left side and a few different templates, with and without subgrade stabilization and whatnot. So I'm going to just go ahead and activate this. So here's my 2 lanes. So the behavior of this lane is really going to depend on the template. So let's take a look at what happens when this one's in full super. So I'm going to edit that point, and instead of minus 1.6, I'm going to give it an 8% slope and apply that. So I can see the way this is defined, that's still staying at a constant slope. So if I process this without that lane, this isn't going to necessarily do what I want. Well, let's edit that. And I'm going to tell it, instead of a constant slope, I'm going to tell it to use a vector offset. So 2 points define a vector. So my PGL point and my right edge of my lane point define a vector. I'm going to do an offset of 0 from that and apply that. So I'm editing the ODOT template here. Normally I would just copy that down, rename it, edit my copy. So that's normal workflow. But now I can see if I process this template the way I have it defined, I really don't need that piece. Now what's going to happen to this is it runs into that turn lane. Well, what's going to happen is the rules that are applied for the turn lane, when I assign that to corridor, those override the slopes, and in this case, the vector offset that defines the slope. That overrides the slopes that are defined in the template. So what I just did is a perfectly acceptable way to do this. Like everything in the software, there's probably multiple ways to accomplish the same task. But what I wanted to get across here was the process to define a turn lane. So now that's defined with the slopes, and when I apply that to my template or to my corridor, those points would be applied to those points in the template. So there's a couple other things I'll show here to review this. If I select the section graphics and take a look at the Superelevation editor dialog, I'm going to see that lane is defined in here, where it's at 8%, coming down to 3%, and then staying at 3%. So we should be able to find that lane in here somewhere. There it is, my right turn lane and its parameters. So those 2 shapes that define that, their stations and values could be edited here. Another way I could edit that in the pop-up menu for the tools here is looking at it in the Superelevation model, and that's just opening a view window and telling it, show me those transition lines in the view, and I'll see that lane here, or those 2 pieces of that lane here, and I can edit those values there as well. This will also show up in the Superelevation report. So if I look at my reports, I'll see my left lane, my right lane, and there's my turn lane and my turn lane 2 and their values. So I think that's all I need to show you on that. That should get you started. And then when you apply this to the corridor, the process is basically the same as what we had done previously. When we applied it to 2 lanes, we're just applying it to 3 lanes now.